Hi there, I'm the real life fake wizard. The more I do these videos and do more research into the games industry, the more I believe that it is a house of cards filled with incompetence, misdirection, but most of all, avarice. Greed is a critical factor in gaming. On February 20th, 2026, Phil Spencer, the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, the man who has been the face of Xbox for over a decade, announced his retirement, effective pretty much immediately. And in the same announcement, Sarah Bond, Xbox president and Spencer's protégé, the woman who had been primed for 8 years to take over the top job, resigned. Both of them quit abruptly at the same time on the same day. And if you're sitting there thinking that's kind of weird, yes, it is weird. When CEOs and presidents who've overseen nearly $80 billion in acquisitions and led massive tech companies for nearly a decade retire, usually it's to the sound of fanfare and they roll out a red carpet for an orchestrated passing of the torch. Corporate retirements can be used as a show of strength for the brand and the company, signaling to investors that things are still going according to plan. But in this case, Spencer's departure was a Friday afternoon memo and a Monday morning replacement. And who is that replacement? Asha Sharma, a 36-year-old executive whose career includes Instacart, Meta, a home services startup, and Microsoft's AI division. No game development experience, no publishing experience, no studio management experience, no gaming industry experience of any kind at any point in her entire career. Now, all of that could be fine, and maybe Sharma is gonna do a great job, but there are too many questions. There are too many variables, and gamers are being left in the dark. Intentionally. Gamers are being intentionally left in the dark at a time when the overall gaming industry is going through a slippery slope market consolidation. My friends, the video game industry as we know it is collapsing. Things are changing. We don't have journalists asking the right questions. We don't have creators asking the right questions. And because of that, companies like Microsoft will be able to accomplish strategic moves that are less and less friendly for us gaming customers. Today's indie game shoutout is Factorio, a game about building and creating automated factories to produce items of increasing complexity within an infinite 2D world. Use your imagination to design your factory, combine simple elements into ingenious structures, and finally protect it from the creatures who don't really like you. To learn more about this and hundreds of other indie games, visit our free indie game discovery network, fakeportal.com, or scan the QR code on your screen. Now back to the video. Part 1. The successor. Let's start with who Asha Sharma actually is, because the conversation online has been almost entirely about whether or not she plays video games. How many hours have you sunk into Hello Kitty Island Adventure? But that is the least interesting thing about her. What is interesting is her career history compared to the role she just started at Xbox and how those two things are connected. Sharma graduated from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management with a business degree. From there, she went into Microsoft for a brief marketing stint. Then she was a key leader at Porch Group, which is a home service platform. She was their chief marketing officer and then COO. After that, she moved to Meta as vice president of product and engineering, where she ran Messenger and Instagram Direct. From there, she became COO of Instacart, the grocery deliveries app overseeing product design, data science, marketing, operations, and customer support. In 2024, she joined Microsoft as president of Core AI Product, and today she is the CEO of Microsoft Gaming. That is her career. That is the person who now runs Xbox. At this point, there are some clear takeaways. Firstly, she's got no games industry history, which means no knowledge of shipping games or resources required to make games. She also doesn't have the emotional connection to Xbox's history or the decisions made from 2013 onward that led to the dramatic decline of the Xbox brand. I'm also going to wager, and I hope I'm wrong here, but she likely doesn't understand who gamers are, or the grievances gamers have with the industry as a whole. She doesn't know how emotional gamers are and what they actually want. This is important, right? Like, you're the CEO of a $100 billion business. You should have an intense understanding of who the people are that buy your product. But the second takeaway is that her background is corporate through and through, working in many different parts of the corporate America world and clearly rising those ranks quickly. That means this is someone who speaks corporate tongue and must understand it well to be so high-ranking so young. And some journalists have noted that she's known for being skilled at user acquisition, allegedly making a name for herself with strong user growth during her tenure at Instacart. But the question isn't whether she's competent, right? Because clearly she is. The question is whether her competence is relevant to running the largest gaming division on the planet. And everything on her resume says logistics, operations, services, delivery infrastructure. Not one line says creative vision, player community, or studio culture. Microsoft is effectively telling us she's not there for the creation of new games per se. She's there for the machine. Part 2, the Misdirection. Now, immediately after the announcement of the new CEO, gamers took to social media and started asking about her resume. How many games has she played? Has she sunk 800 hours into Minecraft? Is she a sweaty League of Legends player? And will she bring back Viva Pinata? Oh wait, that was just me. People wanted to scrutinize if she was a real gamer to the point, well, I think gamers gave up their cards on this one. Within hours of her announcement as the CEO, Asha Sharma's Twitter account became active. She put out a statement, and by Saturday, she was replying to tweets and gave out her gamer tag so that we could see her resume. The account is realistically only 3 weeks old. Most of the achievements collected are done so on the same 3 or 4 different days. And all the gamers on social media who were trying to condemn her for not being a quote-unquote real gamer essentially were defeated here. Yeah, because Access Media journalists and creators took her replies and gaming history and ran victory laps with it. They got to frame the conversation as, "See, chuds, the angry gamers are wrong again. She does play games. You're all just toxic." Now, I point all of this out, and I think it's very important because, well, as I'm watching this, I can see this is clearly misdirection. This was Microsoft's big play, baiting angry gamers to go after her achievement list instead of going after her qualifications. My friends, many of you fell for it. We're talking about a division of a $3 trillion company that just spent nearly $70 billion on the largest gaming acquisition in history, and it's also failing to meet its own financial targets, the leadership of which was just ousted in an afternoon memo without a piece of cake or even a pizza party. What is going on here? And what is happening for Xbox? Microsoft is too big and too powerful. Whatever happens next will impact all gamers. Doesn't matter what console you play on. I don't care what her KD is in Call of Duty. I have thousands of questions, and because the gamers were so easily baited, the Access Media journalists aren't asking the scrutinizing questions that are important. They're running defense for Microsoft, talking about the bigoted, hateful gamers who don't want to see a woman in a leadership role. Do you see what I mean? Don't worry, journalists. I will ask the important questions here. And I think they're the questions every gamer deserves the answers to. Number 1, was Phil Spencer pushed out, or did he choose to leave? Microsoft says he told Nadella in the fall of 2025 that he was, quote, thinking of stepping back, but thinking about it in the fall and being replaced 3 days after a Friday afternoon announcement are 2 very different timelines. Which one is it? What's the truth? 2, why was the announcement so compressed? If this was planned for months, why didn't Microsoft give it a proper rollout? Why the Friday to Monday timeline? 3, did Sarah Bond quit because she was passed over? Was she passed over? Was she forced out? She was the heir apparent. Everyone in the industry expected her to take the top job, and an outsider here was brought in instead. What happened? 4, were both departures connected or independent? Because 2 senior leaders leaving simultaneously is not normal. Was this a coordinated clearing of the deck? 5, who made the decision to hire Sharma? Was this Nadella's pick? The board's, perhaps? Or was there an executive search firm involved? Because the person who chose her tells you a lot more about her than her gaming resume does. Number 6, what is Sharma's actual mandate from Microsoft leadership? every CEO hire at this level comes with a directive. There's a reason they're brought in, like grow revenue by X or cut costs by Y, reposition the brand towards Z. What is hers? She posted on Twitter that her commitments are great games, the return of Xbox, and the future of play, and she even had a press release posted on the Microsoft website addressing this, but it's all just corporate word salad synergy jargon. What are you actually going to do, and how are you going to do it? 7. What are Xbox's real financial numbers? Yeah, we know a little bit, but where are we really at here? And where are we supposed to be going? These are very important. Does Xbox have a future? 8. What was the Activision acquisition supposed to deliver by now? And has it? Same for Bethesda. Are these acquired companies delivering on their billions of dollars in value? It seems like the answer is no. What is going wrong? Number 9. Is restructuring, or rather, divestiture on the table? This is very important, my friends, and not nearly enough people are talking about it. Number 10, why aren't the journalists asking any of these important questions? I mean, yeah, I already said they're running defense for Microsoft, but I thought the job of a journalist was to inform the public. Oh wait, my mistake. That's right. Journalists today are just PR mouthpieces of an industry, and they need to make sure they keep getting invited to the private events. You know, the number of journalists I have actual respect for is, well, I could count them on my fingies. Part 3. The Bond problem. Sarah Bond joined Xbox in 2017. She was promoted to Xbox president in 2022, and for 8 years she was groomed to be Phil Spencer's successor. Industry analysts described her as the heir apparent. Media described her as the heir apparent. By every visible metric, she was next in line. And then, on February 20th, 2026, she quit the same day as Spencer, in the same announcement. But, and this is a big but, a few hours before the announcement of her resignation, Sarah Bond was active on LinkedIn. She reposted an Xbox research survey about accessibility features in gaming and added her own comments, quote, "We'd love to learn more about how you play so we can continue improving Xbox accessibility features. When everybody plays, we all win." Green heart emoji. Hashtag gaming for everyone. Let's think about that for a second. 3 to 5 hours before she's gone, she's promoting Xbox brand values on LinkedIn. She's posting as someone who is fully invested in the future of this company, but she's about to leave the company. Yeah, people who know they're about to resign don't often post brand-forward marketing content for a company they're walking away from the same afternoon. So with that in mind, either her LinkedIn is run by a bot, or it's run by an intern who didn't get the memo, or, and what seems to be more and more likely, Sarah Bond didn't know what was coming until that moment where she was gone. Her resignation memo on LinkedIn is polished. It praises Xbox. It endorses Asha Sharma. And it includes this line, quote, "I've had the privilege of spending time with Asha over the last few weeks." Over the last few weeks? The heir apparent was asked to spend a few weeks getting to know the outsider who was hired over her? Interesting, because that implies that either Sarah knew this was coming and that she was going to resign, or she had no idea she was doing an exit interview with her replacement. And that brings up more questions, actually. Why? Why wouldn't Sarah get Phil's job? There's no future for Sarah at Microsoft at all. She resigned entirely. There are no other positions inside this company to transition to. All these years of executive level work and you just resign with no other job prospects? What's next on the horizon? Doesn't this all seem a little odd? And Phil Spencer's own framing is pretty revealing. He wrote, quote, "As part of this transition, Sarah Bond has decided to leave Microsoft to begin a new chapter as part of this transition." Those words tie her departure directly to the leadership change. Then let's take a look at the news coming out of The Verge, which is reporting that people are internally relieved that Sarah Bond is gone. She was the one behind the Xbox Anywhere campaign, and this cringy Xbox ad was her idea, which turns out offended a lot of people internally. I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but it's clear that something is going on here, and it's hard to just take everything said at face value, when even what's being presented at face value isn't being done confidently. Sarah Bond resigned. That's kind of a brain teaser. What happened? Why? Part 4. Xbox is failing. Let's talk about why any of this is happening, because the leadership changes at this level don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because something isn't working out. In 2023, Microsoft, under CFO Amy Hood, began pushing what has been reported as a 30% accountability margin target for the gaming division. Bloomberg was the one who reported this. Microsoft later denied the specific 30% figure as incorrect, while affirming that they do have ambitious goals. Translation here, the number leaked, the pressure is real, and they don't want you to know the exact target because they're definitely not hitting it. 30% is pretty huge. Like, for context here, the gaming industry's typical operating margin runs between 17 and 22% for things like blockbuster titles. Xbox's historical margins have been reported to be in the range of 10 to 20%. Microsoft was demanding performance that significantly exceeds what the gaming industry normally produces, and we know they did not achieve it. In Q2 of fiscal year 2026, the quarter ending December 31st of 2025, Microsoft reported that gaming revenue fell 9% year over year. Xbox hardware revenue dropped 32%, which is massive. Content and services revenue, which includes Game Pass and first-party game sales, fell 5% and was described by Microsoft's own CFO as below expectations. Operating income for the more personal computing segment, which houses all of gaming, was down 3%. And it seems like Xbox was a contributing factor. Now let's talk about the Velociraptor here, the $69 billion Velociraptor. Not that one. Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard in 2023. The thesis behind this deal was that owning this content would make Xbox the dominant gaming platform. It would supercharge Game Pass subscriptions. It would give Microsoft an unassailable content library, and the numbers are still going down. If you spend $69 billion acquiring the most valuable content catalog in gaming, and your revenue is still declining, your hardware sales are cratering, and your first-party output is described as below expectations, the acquisition thesis didn't work. Yeah, either because the games are just bad, like they're not good enough and people don't want to buy them or play them, or because the strategy behind the acquisition, the fact of owning the content, would drive Xbox platform dominance, has not materialized. The truth, I think, could be a combination of both concepts. And this problem is not just a Phil Spencer problem, not just a Sarah Bond problem, per se. This is a Microsoft strategic planning problem that goes all the way up to Satya Nadella. Microsoft spent nearly $80 billion acquiring some of the most famous studios in the world. And within 2 years, they were closing studios, canceling games that had been in development for half a decade, and laying off thousands of the people they had just acquired. And then there's Game Pass, my friends. Game Pass was supposed to be the entire Xbox strategy, the Netflix of gaming, but subscriber growth has plateaued, and, well, why, you might ask? Content is stale, that's a big one, and a point that is seldom talked about. And there are plenty of other reasons that it would plateau, but when you can't grow the subscriber base as you plan to or as you promised, and this juggernaut costs just too much money to operate, you know what you do? You raise prices, which they did multiple times, because price increases on a stagnant user base is the last tool in the box when the growth story is over. Call of Duty was supposed to be the crown jewel driving Game Pass adoption, but because Game Pass user acquisition is so unreliable, they continue to put Call of Duty everywhere, on every platform. If your killer exclusive is no longer exclusive, either it wasn't driving enough subscriptions to justify the exclusivity, or the subscription model itself isn't performing. The strategy here is broken, and it costs $70 billion. When we stop and analyze the poor decisions of Xbox, it's like a pattern of bad calls where they keep missing the ever clearer answer as to what they should do. But let's take us back now to 2013. Don Matrix's always online DRM disaster, the Kinect pivot, a bad E3 presentation. Essentially, all the great work done under Matrix's tenure vanished in a single presentation, along with his reputation. The Xbox One was a disaster. And so, under Phil and later Sarah's stewardship, they shipped Game Pass, the Netflix of games, but that wasn't enough either. So, what do we do? I guess we go multi-platform, right? If we can't get gamers to buy our consoles and games, we'll widen the funnel to get more people in at the top of the funnel. That's gonna do it. And, that didn't work out either, huh? Well, I guess we let's buy up all the IPs in gaming. We'll just buy everything and we'll control all the games coming out, and with the big funnel and all the games, that'll make us successful. And no. Seems like that hasn't worked out at all. I said a moment ago, there was a clear answer, and not Xbox or Sony or Tencent or Nintendo has the wherewithal to admit the answer staring them all in the face. And that answer is make better games, which takes us very clearly into point 5. The Desperation play. Xbox exclusives are now releasing on PlayStation and Nintendo. Games that were supposed to be the reason you bought an Xbox are now going everywhere. Microsoft is calling this a bold new strategy. I'm calling it what it is, an admission of failure. If the games were good enough to drive people to the platform, they'd keep them exclusive. That's what exclusivity is, my friends. You have the confidence to say, this experience is worth coming to us for. This experience is so good, you'll buy a $500 console to play it, and all our other exclusives, which are just as memorable and impactful. The multi-platform push is the opposite of that statement. Instead, it says we no longer believe people will come to us, so we have to go to them. You know what I mean? Like, people would still buy Xbox merch and t-shirts and live their lives as brand advocates because they still loved Xbox. But now, what do Xbox fans really have to be proud of, huh? Gears 5? South of Midnight? Redfall? Starfield? Halo Infinite? What a joke. And very sad. I say that as someone who used to be an Xbox diehard once upon a time ago. And Satya Nadella's own words confirm this. When he announced Asha Sharma, he praised her ability to, quote, build and scale services that reach billions of people and align business models to long-term value. Read those words carefully, my friends. Not a single one of them is about games or creative vision or player experiences. He's using logistics corporate language. Nadella also said, and this is a direct quote, the best way to innovate is to have good margins. Margins first, innovation second. The gaming, well, I guess it comes somewhere else down the line, maybe never. This opens the door to more questions that journalists aren't asking. Does Microsoft actually want Xbox to be a gaming brand? Or do they want it to be a services platform? Perhaps maybe it's a content delivery mechanism for Azure cloud infrastructure, AI integration, and recurring subscription revenue. Is that all Xbox is now? Because if Nadella sees gaming as a delivery mechanism rather than a creative enterprise, then every decision here sadly starts to make sense. The outsider CEO from Instacart and Meta makes sense. The end of exclusivity makes sense. The studio closures make sense. The layoffs make more sense. You're not building a gaming company anymore. Xbox needs to reduce itself to hit margin targets to justify its existence inside a corporation and revolutionized economy that demands more capital be spent on AI advancement rather than Viva Pinata. Asha Sharma is here to operationalize Xbox, to make it as efficient and profitable, whether or not it's still Xbox when she's done. That's her real mandate, okay? I don't think it's a mystery, and yet no one seems to be addressing this. And here's the thing. Okay? This isn't just Xbox, my friends. This is happening everywhere. Sony is releasing PlayStation exclusives on PC. God of War, Horizon, The Last of Us, Spider-Man. Games that were supposed to be the reason you bought a PlayStation are now available without one. Square Enix abandoned PlayStation exclusivity for Final Fantasy, and it's going multi-platform. Even Nintendo, the most fiercely exclusive company in the industry, is seeing pressure to put its library on more devices. Nintendo Switch 2 sales were explosive on one hand, but are slowing down on the other hand. I think they'd rather eat their foot than put Zelda on PC. So if you see Nintendo executives eating their feet in 3 years, now you know why. Everyone is going everywhere. And on the surface, that sounds great for consumers, right? And PC Master Race players, you're winning. More access, more choices, more ways to play. But there are consequences nobody's talking about. When every platform has the same games, there's no reason to choose one over another. And when there's no reason to choose, platform competition dies. And when platform competition dies, you lose the singular pressure that has historically forced these companies to make great games. I'd like you to think for a second about what exclusivity actually meant originally, right? Halo existed because Microsoft needed a game so good that people would buy an Xbox just to play it. Uncharted existed because Sony needed that for PlayStation. Zelda existed because Nintendo needed that for their hardware sales. Exclusivity surpassed business strategy. Sure, they loved seeing the console wars, right? But more so, and more importantly, these companies used to have competitive pressure that demanded excellence. In generations past, you had to make something so extraordinary that a person would spend $400 on a console for access to it. That pressure produced some of the greatest games ever made. Remove that pressure, and what do you get? Exactly what we have today. Safe, homogenized, multi-platform releases designed to maximize reach instead of maximize quality. You don't need to make the best games anymore. You just need to make a game that's adequate enough to sell on 5 platforms simultaneously. The bar drops from system seller to good enough, and good enough is how an industry slowly dies while pretending it's thriving. You know, the truth is here, and this is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of you, if these companies were still making games that were genuinely great, they'd keep them exclusive, and you'd love them for it, because great games move hardware. Great games justify platforms. The fact that everyone is abandoning exclusivity is an industry-wide admission that they don't believe their own products are strong enough to be the reason someone actually chooses their ecosystem. Multi-platform gaming is not the push towards consumer advocacy that content creators keep telling you that it is. These companies are cooked and the game is over. Part 6, the bigger picture. I could end this video here, and maybe I should. I can tell you that Xbox is in trouble and that Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond's departures are visible symptoms of a brand in crisis, and that would be accurate and that would probably be enough, but it would not be the whole truth. Because, as I said a moment ago, this isn't just Xbox. The entire video game industry is consolidating, and consolidation in a creative industry is a death sentence for innovation. Since 2022, approximately 45,000 video game industry jobs have been eliminated globally, with many more happening this year. Over 30 studios were fully closed. In the United States, 1 in 3 game developers reported being personally affected by layoffs in the previous 2 years. And the people hit hardest? Narrative and writing roles. They're the ones losing all the jobs. The people who tell the stories. The people who, at one point or another, made games better. Microsoft cut thousands. Sony laid off 900, including 220 at Bungie, a studio that they had just acquired for nearly $4 billion. EA laid off 1,700 across 2023 and 2025. And Embracer Group, a company that went on an $8 billion acquisition spree, subsequently closed 44 studios and eliminated roughly 8,000 positions when the spending bubble collapsed. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund acquired EA for $55 billion. Tencent took a $1.16 billion stake in an Ubisoft subsidiary. The money is consolidating, which means the power is consolidating and the workers are being discarded in the aftermath. And what does a consolidating industry produce, like historically speaking? Risk aversion. It's something that keeps coming up in a lot of videos here now. In 2025, of the 19 live service games that launched, 15 lost 80 to 99% of their player base. That is a 79% catastrophic failure rate for a business model that the entire AAA industry has organized itself around. They bet the farm on live service, and the farm is burning. For nearly a decade, these conglomerates have told their shareholders that live service is the future of gaming because of the guaranteed player revenue. Now, those promises have a 79% failure rate. Let's flip it around to the other side now. AAA budgets have ballooned to $200 and $300 million per title. At those numbers, every project must be a guaranteed hit, or it's not getting greenlit, which means they can't take fresh chances. Innovation dies, and the industry has pivoted now to prequels, remakes, and live service games in order to take the most calculated risks. It's even too hard to make sequels now because the franchises are so fragile. One bad game and your 20-year franchise is dead, gone, bye-bye. Put it in the trash. Gamers rightfully have higher expectations because they remember when games were being made at their best. Also, this is another point, the youth aren't getting on the train as easily. It's hard to do a Resident Evil 9 without remaking 2, 3, and 4 first in order to bring new gamers into the funnel. It's for this reason and more we see so many remakes, by the way. This is a big part of it. Like, look around. Halo's getting remade. Final Fantasy, remakes. Metal Gear Solid, remakes. Dragon Quest, remakes. The safest bet in a risk-averse industry is something people already bought once, but these remakes aren't growth, they're maintenance. They just barely keep the lights on. They do not build the future. The industry generated almost $200 billion in global revenue in 2025. That's up 7.5% year over year. The money is there. It has never not been there, but it's being extracted. The studios are closing, the workers are leaving, the games are getting worse, and the executives keep getting richer. A lot of people online keep saying things like, when's the game crash gonna happen? When does it all fall apart? And then they'll have to start making games for me again, because I wanna buy some games. My friends, this is the crash. You're looking at it right now. The crash doesn't look like line graphs plummeting to zero. It looks like everything we're watching now. Everything consolidating. It looks like everything getting bigger and emptier at the same time. The money goes up and the quality goes down, and the people who actually make the things you love get chewed up and spit out. That's the crash, and right now we're living it. Part 7, what I really think is happening. Look, I can't get inside Microsoft's boardroom, but what the evidence here, in my assessment, as a business-minded individual and someone with more than a decade of marketing industry experience, and actually as a gamer too, well, it all points to something concerning. I believe Phil Spencer was not fired in the literal sense. I believe he was shown the writing on the wall. When your division misses its margin targets after a $70 billion acquisition, when your hardware sales are collapsing, when your first-party output is described by your own company as below expectations, and the board installs someone from outside your industry to replace you, the distinction between retired and pushed is academic. Whether he walked out or was walked out doesn't change the outcome. He's gone because Xbox underperformed under his leadership, which is measured against the targets that Microsoft set themselves. I believe Sarah Bond saw what was coming and recognized that the version of Xbox that she spent 8 years building toward no longer exists in Microsoft's plans. The LinkedIn post 3 hours before the announcement tells me she didn't know the full picture until it was too late. The few weeks with Asha line tells me she was in a managed exit. She quit because the chapter of her life she was in just got rewritten without her. I believe Asha Sharma's mandate is operational efficiency and margin improvement. This is not a creative renaissance. There are no great games first, despite her claiming so. And I hope I'm wrong here, man. Like, please prove me wrong. Her entire career is scaling platforms and optimizing delivery systems. That is what Microsoft bought. Nadella told you himself, services that reach billions, business models aligned to long-term value, and good margins as the prerequisite for innovation. Sharma is a restructuring hire described in growth language. Oh, and get ready for AI to take over all of the gaming industry, okay? You think the layoffs are bad now? Every one of you out there who is morally against AI taking over art, hold on to your butts and get Will Smith his spaghetti, because this chick is bringing the AI takeover wave. And I also believe that the access media isn't asking the questions I asked in this video, because the access model depends on maintaining relationships with Microsoft's PR apparatus. If you ask hard questions, you risk losing early review copies, exclusive interviews, and event invitations. You cowards. You risk losing ad revenue from Microsoft's marketing spend if you ask real questions. Jeez, man. And, oh yeah, look at this. Here's IGN's executive senior editor running a story about if Asha's Twitter account is a bot. Can we get real, please? Because this is embarrassing. But you know, this is the safest possible conversation for everyone in the media ecosystem, except, well, you, the gamer, the customer. No one cares about you. Now, I could be wrong. And in a lot of ways, I kind of hope I am. I'm just a fake wizard on YouTube, you guys. I'm not an insider. I don't have sources at Microsoft, but I can read financial filings. And I can spot the difference between what a company says and what a company does. And what Microsoft is saying and what Microsoft is doing feels like two different things. So here's what I'd ask. If I'm wrong, prove it. Someone with a press badge, ask these questions. Ask about the margin targets. Ask what the Activision ROI is. Ask whether divestiture has been discussed. Ask who specifically selected Sharma and what mandate she was given and giving, right? Ask why 2 leaders left simultaneously with 3 days' notice. Ask the real questions, because the ones you spineless cowards are asking now are doing nothing but giving Microsoft a runway to implement changes and work in the shadows without ever being held accountable by their customers. This is an incredibly important time, and you journalists are dropping the ball. So where does that leave us, huh? Well, the AAA games are uninspired slop. AI is about to take over game production in a lot of ways, but overall, the industry is collapsing because the people running it don't understand it. And increasingly, they're not even pretending to. They are replacing leaders with operational executives. Exclusive experiences are multi-platform spreadsheet plays now. They are replacing transparency with managed narratives that the media amplifies without a single question, and they're replacing investment with extraction. My friends, you are not powerless in this. You never have been, though they want you to believe that you are. Every dollar of that $200 billion the industry brought in last year is from someone's wallet. It's from yours, it's from mine, your friends, and every dollar is a decision. So I will charge you with this. Support the people who make great games. There are still a lot of them out there. There's a lot of people in the indie space here who are making incredible experiences. And ask who's funding what you play. If they can't be transparent, or if they have something to hide, that's pretty telling, and you'll learn a lot about it right there. Stop accepting corporate narratives at face value as well, and stop letting the media tell you that asking questions makes you a bad person. It doesn't. Asking questions is what the journalists were supposed to do, and in a lot of ways, you shouldn't even have to ask questions. But the industry and the culture we live in are so corrupt that you're a fool if you don't ask questions yourself. I don't know if this video is going to change anything. Maybe it doesn't. It probably won't. But I know you can't fight what you can't see. And now, at the least, I hope you can see it. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire, and for the love of God, cancel Disney+. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.